But this week we're joined by a very special guest. We're joined by a mobility coach called Mr. Toby Swallow. John's been working with Toby for how long now?
About 6 months, isn't it?
Yeah, about that.
For about 6 months. John is finally not completely immobile and has normal functioning limbs, which is funny because he is small. And Toby's going to tell us all about the importance of being flexible, being healthy, and how that actually relates to you and your business. Because if you're anything like me, you're probably at your desk all fucking day. And if you're not at your desk, you're probably in a warehouse moving shit around, doing your back no good. So I've probably just butchered exactly what you do, Toby. Do you want to tell us what you do in a little bit more detail with some more technical excellence?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Connor. Thanks, John, for having me on the show here. I really appreciate that. So I work with middle-aged guys, 40, 50-year-old guys, where this is the age bracket where guys start to notice a few aches, pains, stiffness, and it's very common, but it's not normal, to blame our age. And it's simply because we haven't looked after our bodies. Guys haven't done the work in order to keep them moving. Now, you mentioned about flexibility. When we talk about flexibility, often this is associated with muscular flexibility, i.e., can you touch your toes? Something very different from joint movement. So when we do some sort of physical activity, a sport, a form of exercise, typically falls into skill-based. Think about a martial art or a racket sport. We've then got the aerobic stuff, running, rowing, cycling. Then we've got the strength training stuff, like going to the gym, lifting weights. But all of these things, a lot of guys struggle with their joints, and this requires their own specific work as well. It's also about the connective tissue, things like ligaments and tendons. So throughout our lives, if we are not giving our nervous system those signals that we still need a certain range within our joints, over time, that nervous system was going to say, hey, I no longer need that range, so I'm not going to give it to you. And training a tendon is very different from training a muscle. It's a different type of input, different level of training altogether. And it's the itises that we suffer in our middle ages. So it's the tendinitis, plantar fasciitis, it's the tendinosis, that type of stuff. That all becomes far too common. And yet again, guys say, it's my age. And therefore we look for soft passive options, that joint support, taking a pill or rubbing in some sort of magic cream. Yeah, okay, that's very much short-term approach, but doesn't help you long-term. And hey, I'm here to support that because I'm 48, I'm middle-aged, and I know how your aching body feels. Well, not you, Connor, you're a whippersnapper, you're still a baby. So you get the 25, 30-year-old Duracell Bunny PT training these middle-aged guys when they're not dealing with the same life pressures, the lack of sleep, the kids, the mortgage, the business problems. All of these have an impact as well. And you don't have millions of hours in a day or a week to do the stuff that you maybe once did in your 20s. So very much a different approach.
John.
What?
You're an old man. You're a business owner. You're someone with not a lot of time. How have you found working with Toby?
The time thing isn't really true. I mean, I made a decision a long time ago to focus or work my my business days around my exercise, not the other way around. Because if you put exercise, if it's not a priority, it gets relegated. So you get too busy. Jim Rohn says we tell ourselves that one day doesn't matter, but every day matters. Because one day becomes two, becomes a week, becomes 3 weeks, becomes maybe a month over Christmas. And before you know it, you're out of the habit. So I actually prioritize. It's not about time. I've got no time for people who say they don't have the time to exercise, in the same way as we don't have the time for people who say they don't have time to fix their businesses. It's bullshit. They just have different priorities. You know, anyone who sits and watches, say you watch one soap opera, I don't know, EastEnders. How many nights a week is that on? 3 now? 4?
No idea.
Yeah. Well, that's three half-hour slots a week. You could be doing something else: exercise, reading a book on marketing, improving your mind. Get up half an hour earlier at night, in the morning, go to bed, and half an hour later at night. Spend less time on doom scrolling. So the time thing is bullshit. But to answer your question, how have I found it? And this is, I said this on my testimonial for Toby, and I'm sure people think I'm just making it up. Within 3 days, or rather on the third morning, which meant I'd done one of the 3 tri-weekly training exercises and 3 sets of what he calls CARs, the morning routine. And I was noting an objective change. I could walk my dogs without feeling pain in my hips. It was just unreal. Now, fast forward 6 months, I've probably been 90% diligent. I've missed some time for various reasons. I had a couple of colds and things. But 6 months on, and when we say it's hard work, it is hard work, but it's not hard work in the sense of building a house or digging a road. It's maybe 20 minutes hard work 3 times a week and 10 minutes hard work every morning, because it's concentrated work. 6 months later, I've still got a long way to go, but I can do things that I didn't even realize I couldn't do until I realized I could do them again. So a list of small things that make a small difference, but all add up. Things that most guys won't even know they can't do anymore, such as getting in and out the car without any trouble at all, even in a narrow space in the car park. Toby and we're quite good friends as well, so we exchange WhatsApps, and I often send him a message from the car park of my local supermarket, kind of laughing at guys younger than me struggling to get out their cars because they're just so stiff. And many of them are obese as well, which again, I don't have time for. It's my metabolism. No, it's not. There's a simple exercise you could do to lose weight. Please, no, thank you. I don't want any more food. Dead easy.
It's a thyroid condition. Come on, John.
Yeah, right. I think it's an appetite condition, I think. Getting in and out the car, tying my shoelaces, putting my socks on, getting dressed in the mornings, shaving my head. I mean, I can do this with ease now, whereas before it was a real kind of, yeah. On the squat bar, I actually hitherto I've used a safety squat bar with handles that come down here. Well, now I can actually do this properly and pull the bar down. I probably haven't been able to do that for 10 years, something like that. I still hurt in the mornings sometimes. I think a lot of that's just down to the weight training. I don't hurt the same way. Ache, that is. Yeah, it's just lots of getting up and down off the floor to play with the dogs. The other day, my wife's vacuum cleaner needed unblocking. And I had to get down on the floor to do that, and it was just no trouble at all, as opposed to go, let me get down on the floor, heave myself back up again. It's the little things. And this is only in 6 months, and this is a long-term, lifelong thing. I mean, I'll probably be doing some version of this stuff, certainly the morning routine, the cars, probably every day for the rest of my life, which might only be a short period of time. We never know. But yeah, it could be decades,
I like how you referred to the vacuum as my wife's vacuum.
It is hers. She bought it. She bought it. She owns it, so it is hers.
Fair enough. That's a good girl, isn't it?
You know me, right, I speak literally.
Extremely.
Don't read anything into it.
It's still funny. It's still funny to me.
Oh, I knew it as soon as I said it. It was funny.
And you was harrowed by the image. I think that Toby might have painted for you.
He did.
The idea that you'd be 70 years old, having to get off the toilet using a handrail. Now imagine that. You spent your whole life building a successful business. You finally can enjoy the fruits of your labour at 70. And your reward is getting off the toilet using a fucking handrail.
Well, the thing is, and again, Toby and I talk about this quite a lot because we're both, intelligent people. We're not morons. My dad was probably fairly fit and healthy most of his life, but he never did any exercise, dedicated exercise like we do. He didn't do any kind of regime. So when he stopped working for a living, he just didn't do very much. He used to drive a bus full of other old people around. But he fell and broke his hip. My mum died. She did the same thing. She broke a hip, but she just allowed her world to collapse in on her. But my dad, he fell and broke his hip. And at that point, because he'd never done any exercise, he suddenly felt a loss of control. The control is an important word here. So he became afraid to leave his house. Well, as Toby would often say, if you don't use it, you lose it. And he means your ability, you just said this morning, your ability to perform movements. Well, because Dad did nothing but get up and down out of his chair, maybe go into the kitchen and back again, and maybe go up the stairs at night, his body would, metaphorically shrink. So that's all it could do. I mean, your body's a very parsimonious thing. It will only do what you ask it to do. It won't volunteer anything because it's all about calories and keeping you alive, really. So he just slowly died, and then he just had a heart attack and went one night. But his entire world caved on him. And this is mental health stuff as well. If you can't get out the house, if you can't walk, if you can't cycle, say, then your world is constrained by 4 walls and a television and maybe the internet. That's not healthy. What do you reckon, Tobes?
Yeah, absolutely, John. I know we're on exactly the same page on all of this stuff. We need to take accountability for our own condition, whether we are thriving or in a state of demise. And I was reading an article the other day about Tesco's had been fined, I think it was back in 2020, over £700,000 for a gentleman who'd gone into one of their stores and he'd slipped and had multiple hip fractures. Now, looking at the detail, the guy was 91. Okay, so he's an old man. Now, would they have received the same fine if that was Connor? Because Connor, being a nice young chap, would have gone in. It was definitely a slip hazard, having a wet floor and maybe not everything in place to deal with that. But maybe, Connor, you would have just slipped and landed on your ass and had a bruised backside for a few days. But this 91-year-old chap, has he done the work necessary over the last few decades to minimise bone loss? Yes. Has he done the work to maintain his physical strength and his muscle mass through aging? Has he done the work to maintain his mobility and his foot speed? Probably not. So instead of blaming Tesco's to be 100% at fault here, why is it that we can't look at an individual and say, well, okay, yeah, hands up, this has happened to you, but what have you done to mitigate your risk from these things? And it's just unfortunate, isn't it? We accept a lot of these things through a natural process of aging, but we can do an awful lot to mitigate that, just like business. And it's the small things, it's the small habits that we do on a daily basis that we either choose to do or not do, just like business, that can determine how successful we are. I've seen that through your mentorship as well, guys.
Yeah, I mean, there's this. We are entering a period now of weak men, hard times. To a partial quote there from the hard times create good men create good times create weak men create bad times. Well, we're coming into a weak men, bad times period now, and it's de rigueur. It is the trend to blame everything else except yourself for no matter what happens to you. So now being obese is not your fault. It's a disease. You can't help it. You're fat. Your parents were fat. Your kids are fat. I'm a fat person. But at the same time, they might want to take an injection to reduce their appetite. So they're accepting the problem is actually how much food they eat, but they're not going to accept responsibility for eating that food. So they'd rather take an injection. Yep. And we see it in business too. Business owners, it's LinkedIn algorithms fucking me over. It's my competitors, it's clients, it's everything else except me. Now, the thing is, looking at it from a Stoic point of view, everything else out there is completely beyond your control. Even down to the contents, the ingredients in the food you see on the supermarket shelves. What you do control is what you put in your mouth, how you move your body, how you run your business, what time you get up, what you watch on TV, what content you allow into your fucking brain, what you write. You control all of those things, but they're the things people just say, oh, it's not my fault. I want the government to help me. I want LinkedIn to change. I want everyone else to change. Some complete wazzock wants a legally enforceable minimum wage for freelancers because she's too fucking stupid and lazy and probably fat and ugly as well to learn how to sell herself, for instance.
There's a a link there, isn't there, between business and our own health and demise, and the fact that we choose to chase feelings now. I say we, this excludes the three of us. Yeah. This excludes the three of us, of course, but it's common now that we chase feelings, and whether on social media this is about likes and engagement, whether this is about the feelings of euphoria. I eat what I like, I eat it because I like it, as opposed to do I need it. There's more emphasis now on doing a form of exercise because you enjoy it. Well, yeah, that's great, but it doesn't mean to say it's going to give you the results. Training balls to the walls and getting that sense of euphoria at the end of a training session doesn't mean to say it was a good training session. And let's be honest, it's all about the results. If I post on social media, I'm looking for a specific result. I want an inquiry to come from that. I don't care if it's had 1 million views or 100,000 likes and lots of engagement. If it doesn't get an inquiry, it wasn't a successful post for me.
Absolutely. I mean, as we said on the call on Wednesday, I think it was, we have one metric. I have one metric in the business I pay most of my attention to. That is, how many calls do I get? That's a result for me, because I know 75% of them will convert into sales. Everything else is window dressing. An interesting point there about blame shifting. Have you noticed how people are turning more and more to government? So, for instance, they've made it, I don't know if it's the case in the UK, but over here we have a sugar tax in Ireland. In the States, it's illegal. I mean, the government has made a law to say it is against the law to sell a fizzy drink with so many grams of sugar in it over a certain size. I mean, when really the responsibility is on the individual not to buy that drink and drink it, surely. I mean, I'm missing something here.
It doesn't work. We know that from cigarettes. How much? I don't alcohol. Smoke, but how much is a packet of 20 cigarettes now? If you're a smoker, you're still going to find the money to smoke, to buy those cigarettes. And it's all about personal choice, isn't it? Whether you choose to do something about it or you choose not to, it is a choice. So looking towards the government is just absconding all of your responsibility to somebody else. And then it's easy to blame them when your business or your health goes tits up. You haven't looked after
but it doesn't work.
And people fall into this trap of saying, well, something's better than nothing. Well, you pay your national insurance contribution in the UK and that will lead to a state pension. There's no guarantee when you retire that's going to pay out, and will it pay out enough? So you pay into a workplace pension scheme, but you pay the bare minimum hoping it's going to pay out. But you haven't had a financial review to establish how much you need to pay every month for financial retirement, so you have a comfortable way of living. And then you say that the government isn't paying enough on the pensions, on the state pension. No different from anything else, is it? So we can put our trust in somebody else, and we know that fails time and time again. Let's be responsible, both in business and for ourselves.
There's a book called The Power of Habit by a guy called Charles Duhigg. I don't know if you ever read it or not. But in there, he talks about fitness and exercise being what he calls gateway habits, meaning the disciplines required to get up, say, at 6 a.m. and go out to a freezing cold barn like I do every morning, 6 mornings a week. Those disciplines bleed over. And I've actually observed this in my own life. About 12, 13 years ago, I was a chubby little thing. And I had a fat John moment when I realised that had to change, and it did. It changed overnight. I started taking my bike out, and I took control of my eating and my exercise, because I'd got lazy and slightly fat. And funnily enough, not only did I start to lose weight and my body change shape, which is really strange, funny that, isn't it? But my business started to take off too. Because the disciplines required to get up and go cycling, go to the gym, etc., and not drink alcohol and eat decent food instead, those disciplines transferred and translated into sitting at my desk working too. Or as I should say, standing at my desk sometimes as well and changing position.
What was, absolutely, what was a bit of an aha moment is attending your recent Core Control in-person event your mastermind event in Cork last month. And Connor, you had given about mapping out your diary, blocking out specific time for certain things, right down to the nth minute. I do that with my food. I do that with my mobility work. I do that with my aerobic capacity work, with my gym training. I do that with my sleep and my downtime and my breath work. But why am I not doing that in my business? You know, so there's a lot of correlation between business. I love routine. I thrive on routine because shit gets done. Yeah. Time and time again. No excuses. Yeah. But when you don't have that in place, then we make excuses that things don't happen or we're not getting the results that we see. So maybe I'm different from the exercise standpoint and the food standpoint because I've mastered that routine and that repetition of being so damn boring over time that it really does work, that I needed to replicate that on my day and weekly, monthly diary as well. I'm routine orientated. I know I will do certain things at certain times a day, but I didn't plan it to the nth degree for my business as I did the health side. And it works. Funnily enough, that, Connor, it's like, you know what you're talking about with that.
Almost. A disciplined man at the end of the day is a disciplined man. And for you to make that transition over is probably easy because you're used to things like calorie counting. You're used to scheduling in your workouts, how many reps you're going to do of each thing. It's all very well orchestrated and planned because you know the power of the work that you're doing. You know that you're going to get the results. So it's probably easy for you making that transition to start applying that into business. At the very least, a lot easier than an undisciplined person trying to do the exact same thing. But when you're starting out for the first time, especially for the fatties listening, because there are a few, you know, we've got a few fellas in construction that are still fat, despite being on the tools, because all they do is eat Greggs at lunchtime all day. And they really struggle to comprehend the idea of something as simple as calorie counting, despite how easy it is for us with the apps that are available today. I assume both of you have got an app that you use to measure it, or you've probably got to the point where you don't need to anymore because you've just got the running log because there's that much experience there.
I eat the same thing every day, so I know I have done for the last 5 or 6 years. So no, I don't have that.
Where I was going with that is, yeah, it's almost like we know what we're talking about, Toby, and it's almost like a disciplined plan produces results. It doesn't matter whether it's your mobility, your fitness, whatever. Well, and if the thought of not being able to wipe your ass when you're 70 years old isn't enough to spring you into action to start taking care of your mobility, you're probably a lost cause, aren't you?